Hey everyone, welcome into an all-new episode of Fighting Back, Defense, Injury, and Real Results with attorney Javier Alatorre, the founder of Alatorre Law. I am your host, Mike Leon. Javier spent more than 20 years representing people all across Arizona who are dealing with serious injuries and trying to make sense of a legal process that often feels confusing and uncertain. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about a question that I guess Javi gets a lot, and maybe it stops a lot of people in their tracks. After an accident, do I actually even have a case in Arizona, or was this just an unfortunate situation with no legal options? Javi's going to break that down in just a second. Let's talk about this, Javi. First of all, it's good to see you. After an accident, a lot of people, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, assume they'll just know whether or not they have a case based on the accident, et cetera. In reality, though, what usually makes it clear or unclear at the beginning?
Well, that's a big question, but first of all, how you doing, Mike? Good to see you again. Thank you for having me again. So, yeah, it is a very common question. I mean, if there's an accident and someone's at fault, with that information alone, you probably have a case, right? If someone was negligent, right, and caused somebody any kind of injury, however minimal, you have a case. But the question really is it enough that it's worth the time to make a claim or sue, right? So there's different elements to it. So the first question is, okay, like what are the damages, right? Because if you have zero damages, why are you wasting your time, right? What, you want to get $1, right? So, but most of the time there are some damages. The issue is sometimes you don't know, right away, right? And most people, they're more into their lives. So it's like, yeah, I just got to get this done. Just get it done. I got something else to do. And then they go. And then the next day or that evening is when they start, oh, what happened? I got hurt, right? So it's very specific to the situation. But I mean, generally speaking, if somebody negligently caused you an injury, you have a case. The other question you need to ask, even if your injury is high enough, right, is good enough to, worth enough to, even if your injury is worth enough to make a claim, like you got seriously injured, the question then is there coverage? Can they pay? Right. And that's just in any lawsuit, right? Because, I mean, I get a lot of calls. People want to sue everybody, right? But the problem is lawsuits are expensive, right? Attorneys cost money. And on a PI case, yeah, the attorney's just taking it on contingency. But if there's no coverage and the other people are not like very, very rich, the attorney's not going to get paid. So the attorney's not going to take it on contingency, right? So one of the things that attorneys look at is, okay, what kind of assets or what kind of insurance or coverage is there to back up to pay for my client's injuries and get me pay me for my time, right? That's kind of one of the things that you'd actually look at. And in any lawsuit, before you actually sue anybody, you need to see how much you can get, because you're not going to spend 50 grand to get somebody to pay you $1,000, right?
Right. It's great points. I want to ask you on that front, and you actually answered the question I was going to ask you, so I'm glad you did that. But let me talk about fault for a second in the state of Arizona, how it's legally defined. So how does that work? Especially you got these situations with an accident. No one feels like they did anything intentionally wrong. Like how is fault designed in the state of Arizona?
So one of the things that you mentioned in your question is nobody thinks they intentionally did anything wrong, right? But if you intentionally caused an injury or property damage, that's probably a crime. Okay. That's not just a civil case. Personal injury cases are based on negligence. There's the difference between negligently causing somebody an injury and intentionally causing an injury is you're literally between a criminal assault, probably a felony assault, because, it's with the use of a vehicle or whatever, or just, there's a lawsuit for money damages, right? So first of all, if it's intentional, this person is going to prison or jail, and then on top of that, you can actually get some restitution and some damages. But your standard PI case is basically somebody did something they were not supposed to. Like negligence traditionally has been defined to have 3 elements: the existence of a duty, right? Something that you have to do or not do. A breach of that duty, right? So basically whatever you were supposed to do or not do, you did it or you didn't do it. And because of that breach, you cost somebody some damages, right? So you need to have all 3, right? That's kind of just a traditional definition of negligence, right? So duty, you have to stop at a red light, right? You don't stop at a red light, breach. You hit somebody, okay? Property damages probably. Were there personal damages? Are there any injuries, stuff like that? That's basically, yeah. But if you have a breach and if you have a duty and a breach, but no damages, you don't have a claim.
Let me ask you, because this happens a lot of times in personal injury cases, key emphasis on the word injury. Injuries seem minor, right? Or they leave the scene there, they don't get checked out. This happens at first. Why do injuries like that, then all of a sudden they go get checked out? Why does that end up mattering more sometimes legally than people expect it to?
Well, I mean, not only legally, but practically speaking, it's just biology, nature, right? Um, you are actually speaking of non-catastrophic cases, right, where the injury is not visibly apparent. Because if you have a significantly bad accident and you have a hole in your head, well, you clearly know you're injured, right? So we're talking about non-catastrophic injuries that can still be serious injuries, but not necessarily visible to the eye. The classic and most common example is the whiplash, right? Right. And the whiplash is just basically the movement back and forth and the forces that are exerted on your neck, sometimes on your brain, right? But most common one is the neck injury, some kind of a disc injury or something that happens inside your neck that gets tweaked because of the acceleration deceleration forces, right? That there's doing that over and over. It's kind of like that shaken baby syndrome kind of thing. Same thing, right? Although shaken baby also causes potentially causes brain damage, right? Um, in the personal injury space, we call that a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, right? So basically, um, your whiplash, traditional whiplash injuries, they take a little time to develop the pain because you can't see your vertebrae or your spine, right? You need an MRI or at least a CT or something to see it, right? Now, if you break a bone, like an X-ray will show it. But if it's not a bone, it's some kind of tissue damage, soft tissue damage. So, a disc, a bulge, something happens in between those bones, those vertebrae. You're not going to see it, and the onset of pain sometimes is immediate, but very commonly it takes some time because some of those injuries are based on inflammation, right? And it takes a few hours for the inflammation to come in. Secondly, you just were in a traumatic accident. You're scared. You're fight or flight or fight, right? So you're all pumped up. Right now, you're trying to survive. So you're not thinking, your brain is not saying everything hurts. Your brain is saying it's don't die, get away from the danger, right? I've had a lot of clients. I don't know how many, but it's so many clients that like they feel perfectly fine at the scene, and they and it's recorded, right? So the insurance company always uses against them, but they're just being honest, right? They're just good people. They're not trying to make a case. They're not trying to pump the insurance company for money. They're just got a place to be, and they don't feel any pain right now, right? So no, I'm fine. I don't need anything. I'm fine. Right. So they go whatever. They don't go to the emergency room. They don't do anything. They just go whatever they have to do, and then maybe go back to work or a meeting, whatever. And eventually they get home, right? And I've had clients when they get home, they start taking a shower, and the pain comes in. Other clients, I had one client who went home, he was fine, and then somebody forced him to go to the hospital. As he was crossing the hospital door, his pain started in his neck started just pumping like crazy, and he was pain free before. So there's a lot of things that happen in the human body that kind of mask the pain. When it's an internal soft tissue injury, you're not going to see it at all without an MRI, and you're not going to feel it until the injury is big enough or until you're calm enough to register the pain, right? So that's a very common occurrence. That's why I always recommend, look, just get checked out, right? Just like we say, take pictures of the vehicles and the damages. You want to take pictures of your neck and of the injury itself, right? I mean, if you have a gash in your face, that's not an issue. You'll have a gash in your face and you can take a picture. But if you have a couple herniated discs or something, you're not going to see those without an MRI. So you need a picture of that too. So usually we just recommend just go to the emergency room, get checked out, make sure you're okay. because you want to make sure you're okay. It's not just about making your case. It's like you want to make sure you're okay. TBI injuries, like traumatic brain injuries, are also they're very difficult. You need a very special type of assessment to determine. And I've had clients that swear they don't have it, and then it's like, I see some symptoms, right? I see some red flags. Convince them, hey, let's get an evaluation. And yeah, the evaluation says, yeah, he had TBI or she had TBI, and these are the and those are very expensive tests that they have to do. But and the problem with the TBI is it's not necessarily physically apparent, but it does it's literally a brain injury, and some of those brain injuries change the person itself. Like the human being changes their personality. They get more irritable. They're less effective at work, stuff like that. That takes time to develop and to notice, right? Sometimes a spouse is the first that will notice. Like he's very moody lately, right? Or stuff like that, right? So things like that take time to develop, especially injuries are not apparent to the eye, right? So that takes time, right?
You're spot on. And let me ask you, piggybacking on that, do you have some examples, maybe some common situations where someone thinks they don't have a case? Once you got the facts kind of laid out, it looked a little bit different. It's like, yeah, I think we do have a case here. Do you have any examples you can share from that?
Well, I can't comment on client cases, but I can comment on generally what happens. Like TBI injuries are commonly overlooked, even by attorneys. Like, because you need to screen for those very specific. One example, for example, is traditionally a TBI. Even in the hospital, they'll probably look for a TBI. I mean, they check you, do CT scan and stuff like that, but usually traditional TBI comes from a head injury, right? So somebody hits their head, so you see some kind of surface injury. Okay, let's check his noggin, right? Make sure he's okay. I mean, usually the ER will do some basic testing to kind of rule some of that out, but sometimes it's not apparent. But sometimes there's no head injury, but it's kind of like that's chicken baby, right? Like the forces of going back and forth move the brain inside the head that your brain actually hits your skull, right? And that's the injury, right? So if the accident caused that injury, it's an injury that should be repaired by the person who caused it, and it was his fault.
Javi, as we kind of wrap here on this episode, a piece of advice for somebody that maybe recently got into that accident, non-catastrophic injuries, but now they're starting to hear you and they're like, I feel a little something coming on. Like, what's a piece of advice that they should do right now that you would advise them on?
Well, get checked out. Like, the way I tell them to my clients is I don't make decisions on their medical treatment. That's for them to decide. My job is to do the legal work. Their job is to make sure they're okay, make sure they're healthy, and they're back to normal as far as possible. But sometimes, like, there's a lot of hesitation because people don't like going to doctors and get tested and poked or whatnot, right? So, I tell them, look, if you don't want to go, that's fine. But if you ask me, right, the only thing I'm asking you to do is go get checked out, right? Go find out. So I say that's what I tell them. I'm not asking you to get any injections. I'm not asking you to go into a surgery. I'm not asking you anything. I'm just asking you, go to a medical professional that can check you out and tell you if you're okay. If you're okay, then that's okay. And then we're good. We're good. That probably just go property damage, whatever. But what if you're not? Forget about a lawsuit. What if you actually have an issue that you need to take care of? And you won't know until like 6 months down the road where you don't know, right? So, and you potentially, if you don't get care, you potentially get worse or something, right? So the way I tell my clients is like, find out. Get the information you need to make an intelligent and informed decision first. Once you have that, you can say, nah, I don't want any treatment. That's fine. That's your decision. But until you know, well, the decision is not informed, so it's probably not a good decision. So my advice always is check, find out, and when you know, then decide.
When you know, then you decide. I love it. Javi, thank you for the time, the insights, breaking this down for the audience. Appreciate it as always, my friend.
Thank you, Mike.
And thank you to everyone out there for listening to this installment of Fighting Back, Defense, Injury, and Real Results. If you want to learn more, you want to connect with Javi and his team as they've been helping injured people all across the state of Arizona, do me a favor right now, visit alatorre.law. And on their website, you're going to find a free copy of Javi's personal injury guide that's available in English y disponible en español. Oh,
Simon.
like that. See, and thank you again for listening. But do me one more favor. Hit like, hit subscribe, leave a review, comment, share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Mike Leon. We'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.